World, and many of the ones I've already talked to say it's a family affair.
This started a long time ago with my sister and I because I had not been to Graceland since 1967.
Rhonda from Michigan told me Elvis Week is a tradition.
I have pictures, the old Polaroid camera of me and my brother sitting next to the lions.
Big events scheduled this week include fan receptions, the candlelight vigil, and the 50th anniversary of the 68 comeback special. In Memphis, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
In final news this hour, New York's governor could be in hot water. That's because he recently told a story about grabbing a feather shed by an eagle after it swooped past his family's canoe during an outing on an Adirondack lake. The New York Democrat says he still has the feather on his fireplace, and according to federal law, that's a major no-no. The Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act of 1940 prohibits the possession of eagle feathers by non-Native Americans. Anyone convicted of violating the law could face a fine of up to $100,000 and a year in jail. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
Nothing can get done in the United States Senate for good unless we end the legislative filibuster. We're urging you today to call your senator and ask them to end the legislative filibuster so that we can defund Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in America. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121, or go to afaaction.net.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I know better than anybody how important it is for us to win this election because I see up close and personal what the Republicans and this president are doing.
Under the Trump presidency, I think we're seeing that across America as the middle class is understanding that their values do go along with the Republican Party. Firefighters and public safety unions are the forgotten constituency of the Republican Party.
Omarosa says that she has taped in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. We've heard the tapes. And this is a national security issue. This is not just about a book anymore. She's giving receipts and she's now in trouble.
And now, Stacy Washington.
I'm giggling because this to me is one of those stories that it's really reality TV worthy, but how in the world did it happen that someone was allowed to slip their little selves into the Situation Room, which is a SCIF, secure compartmentalized something or other facility. It's a place where you can't take anything that can record or take pictures. It's a place where you can't take anything that's unsecure. So even phones that have the utmost security aren't allowed in the SCIF, which we know it happened before because there are pictures of President Obama looking pensive and you know, in the Situation Room, and they weren't taken by official White House photographers. So you know this breach has occurred before. Welcome to the show, everybody. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio, AFR.net, and Urban Family Talk, urbanfamilytalk.com. Go ahead and type those into the search engine and go directly to them. Don't always wait on that Facebook or Twitter referral traffic. We need those clicks to come directly to us, and we appreciate you guys, not just your ears, but your clicks. You're going to our websites and subscribing and being there with us. Thank you for that. So welcome to the show. Happy Monday. I survived. Guys, we dropped off the oldest at college this weekend. And, you know, I was praying. I was like, oh, my goodness, please, let's have this be orderly. And I can tell you, many times, this is one of those times where the Lord has gone above and beyond expectations, where we have this wonderful girl who is our daughter's roommate, and the family, they took early move-in. So at first we were like, why would they move in early? You know me, I'm freaking out. I'm like, why would they do that? What did you know we could move in early? All this stuff. My husband was like, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't worry about it. Just let's do this thing. Let's get there. We get there. And we go up to move in, and she's got all of her stuff moved in. The roommate does. Everything is so neat and orderly. And because they moved in the day before, we were free to go in, the five of us. You know how small those dorm rooms are. And move in our daughter's things and set everything up. And then they showed up later, and we stood around for about 30 minutes, all 10 of us in this tiny dorm room, just getting to know each other, sharing information. They had a beautiful little whiteboard up that said welcome and our daughter's name. So it was just such a wonderful thing. But I feel like a steam truck rolled over me because all of the anticipation, the stress, the emotions, the dropping off, the packing in, the moving in, picking up an extra thing or two, and then driving back home. And then today's the last day of school or the last day of no school before the kids go back to school, the kids who are still here. And the strain, I feel this like invisible strain of, I went to her room last night and she cleaned it up and put all of her things, teenager rooms are like clothing explosion. Everything is in her room like it's a hotel room. Nothing is out of place. There's not a speck of dust anywhere. She just totally cleaned it up. And the bathroom too. So I walked there, I looked in, I'm like, oh my goodness. So then I was like, well, this is as it should be. I have to send her a text and say thank you. So it was just, friends, it's been a real weekend. And now here we are. And there's all this breaking news. Peter Strozk has been fired. Omarosa is continuing to drip, drop the tapes. The president has tweeted his disdain, and some interesting insights there too as well. I don't know if you guys saw the tweets, but the president basically said that when General Kelly came on board, Omarosa really had kind of set herself up poorly there by missing meetings and not being there when she was supposed to be there and being difficult to work with. And he was ready. He said she's not liked around here. We should let her go. And the president said, well, but she says good things about me. Now, I know a lot of people have kind of backlashed about that online, but I think what he meant was that she had the ability to go on to these national shows like she did with Joy Behar, and Joy Behar was calling the president racist, and Omarosa made good points on that program. That was still a stellar example of what to do as a media pundit when you're faced with someone who really, Joy Behar has the bully pulpit on The View. She has control of the audience through the cue card people, and she was setting Omarosa up for a fall, and she refused to have it. So I've complimented her on that performance here many, many times, but I think that was what the president was referring to. That being said, now there's speculation all over online. I mean, just like I saw on 3 separate websites, liberals asserting that the president probably has, a weakness there because any foreign world leader who says nice things about him, he won't be able to treat them as they should be treated. I think that's a bit of a stretch. So welcome in. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking with 2 fantastic guests. We have frequent guest of the program and all-around star and perfect analysis always, Erielle Davidson of the Hoover Institution. And then hour 2, we're going to speak to Reverend Robert Martin. He's the pastor of Hope Central Church in Central LA. And so that's going to be a really great interview as well. Lots of news. Let's move on to Nancy Pelosi. She was all over the shows this weekend, and I thought it was interesting that she had so many things to say that if you think about them beforehand, because people are always castigating the president for making comments, and they're like, oh, that was a gaffe, or oh, he could have thought that through better. I mean, I've criticized him in that way occasionally, but Nancy Pelosi just gets away with murder. She said, among other things this weekend, that the Democrats should just say whatever they need to say to win and sort things out later. And she thinks that NBC, one of their chief priorities as a media organization, is to prevent her or undermine her prospects of becoming speaker when the Democrats take back the House in the fall.
Now, I said a couple of times, if Democrats take back the majority. You said when Democrats take back the majority. If the Democrats do take back the majority, they will be in need of a speaker.
There we go.
And you are the focal point of that discussion because you were Speaker of the House when Democrats took back control officially in 2007. Now, though, NBC News has a story about all the Democrats who are running for election this year. They interviewed, you see it there, Democrats opposing Pelosi. And these are the 51 people who were surveyed who are candidates. 42 of them are not Democratic nominees. 9 of them are incumbents who have said that they will not support you in the run for Speaker.
Well, let me just say first.
I mean, why not, if the Democrats take back the House, give up the gavel?
Well, first of all,
Give it to
let
a
me
new
just say
generation
this,
of
and I know NBC
leaders.
has been on a jag of this. This is one of their priorities, to undermine my prospects as Speaker. But putting that aside, I have not asked one person for a vote. I haven't asked a candidate or an incumbent for a vote.
So she hasn't asked anyone for a vote, and I wouldn't if I were her, because most of the younger members are looking for someone different to be the Speaker, and they feel like she's not radical enough, which is, I mean, something scary is them not thinking she's radical enough. Nancy Pelosi is plenty radical, but if you're a Bernie Sanders Democrat, then whoa, you're looking for something even a little bit stronger than that. You're looking for some, 180 proof, something that you can't have a whole shot glass of. You need like a quarter of a shot glass. That's some strong leftism they're looking for. And Nancy Pelosi has been kind of a voice of reason when Maxine Waters has gone too far past the bend, and they don't want that. They want to go past the bend. They want resistance level type stuff from their leadership. And speaking of that, Ellison. So he's up for election. Keith Ellison. He's a Muslim member of the House. He's pretty radical, and he's been a really close friend of Farrakhan and just advocates for some of the most ridiculous things. Well, now it's come out that a previous relationship that he had with a woman, there's allegations of abuse. Now, he's denying it vehemently, but apparently there may possibly be, in addition to text messages and emails that were exchanged on phones and computers and records of that, apparently there's a video of him dragging a woman, across a room and down some stairs or something like that by her hair. And I think those are things that would, at least the video, would preclude him from getting office, just because people aren't going to vote him in. So that was like breaking news from the weekend. So then on top of Nancy Pelosi's junket around the world and her just kind of, she's got to get out there now, and she's got to start tamping down this it's like a movement, a groundswell against her, and she wants to stay in power. And so in order to do that, making her rounds around the shows, touting her fundraising abilities, talking about how the Republicans are afraid of her. She said that many times over the weekend. And then that brings us to some policies that have been brought about by the left wing of American politics. And that is this idea that people who are mentally ill and suffering from body dysmorphia have the right to shower when they're biological males with women. So the story that I'm going to share with you is about this lady who, first of all, her history is, and her history is important here because it gives you a peek into her mindset. But this, I believe a lot of us women have this mindset, which is we don't want to be changing clothes in front of a man. And it doesn't matter if it's your son or one of your son's friends or a stranger or your neighbor across the street. If it's a man, you don't want to change clothes in front of that person. If people don't feel like that, that's their business. But I'm talking about, I've never met a woman who was like, oh yeah, I'll change in front of anybody. I've never met a woman who never. That's just not, chicks, that's not the way we roll. So we've got this lady, and back in 1997, she was jogging, along a pathway, and a man jumped out and tried to wrestle her to the ground and assault her. She fought him off and ran for her life, and she was bruised and cut with evidence. She went to the police. The 911 trained dogs searched the area. Helicopters came in. They weren't able to find the man, but suffice it to say, it's a documented case of her being assaulted, but she was able to get away. So now let's fast forward to this year. She's a member of Planet Fitness, and she goes to Planet Fitness so she can, obviously she's there to work out. She's working out. She's got her things in the locker room where she changed into her workout gear. She's completed her workout, and she goes back to change. And there is a man standing in the bathroom connected to the locker room, and he's putting on makeup in the mirror. Okay, just in case you're just tuning in, Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on AFR and Urban Family. There's a man in the dressing room area of the locker room, the big open area where the bathroom stalls are on one side, and there's just benches for you to change, and the lockers are like along the wall. She sees the man standing there. He's putting on makeup, and She goes back outside and checks to see if she's in the right locker room. She is, the same one where she put her clothes. So then she says, what are you doing here? You're a man and this is the ladies' changing room. And he says nothing. He does not reply to her, just continues to apply the makeup. She goes to the manager, and the manager says, oh, yeah, we know about him. He identifies as a woman, so he gets to change in there. She said, you know what you should do? You should just wait until he's done putting on his makeup, and then you can go in. So she waits for almost an hour for this man to stop putting on makeup in the women's changing room and locker room so she can go put her clothes back on. Well, now she goes back in and says, it's been almost an hour. You've been putting on makeup. How much longer are you going to be in here because I want to change my clothes? He doesn't say anything. So then she says, I don't feel comfortable changing in front of you, so I need you to finish up so I can change. He doesn't move. He keeps on putting on the makeup. So then she's standing there trying to figure out what to do, and the employee of the Planet Fitness, one of them comes in and says, hey, look, you got to go. She says, why? Well, because you're harassing this transgender person, and we want you to leave. Get your things and go. They revoke her membership. And then the transgender guy reports to one of these LGBT ETC organizations online that she has harassed him and that she's transphobic. Now, she's obviously banned from all of the Planet Fitness facilities, all 66 of them across the country, and she's lost her membership while this guy's running around acting like he's the victim. I'm going to tell you who's responsible for all that when we get back. Oh, and we'll have Erielle Davidson. Stay there.
"80% of the time, an abortion-minded mother who views an ultrasound or sonogram of her baby will choose life. Here's the story of Candace.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
There are currently preborn centers which do not have an ultrasound machine. Would you sponsor a machine today? Dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Your love could save a life.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Michael Barone asks a troubling question. Why is it considered liberal to compel others to say or fund things they don't believe? He raises this question in light of the 3 Supreme Court decisions that struck down compelled speech. He wonders why liberals on the court and progressives in society aren't disturbed by attempts to compel speech. In the past, liberal justices like Oliver Wendell Holmes supported free speech and freedom of association. Today, liberal Supreme Court justices don't see a constitutional problem with compelling crisis pregnancy centers to send messages they find repugnant or forcing people to participate in ceremonies prohibited by their religion. David French is concerned that liberals don't understand why conscience is so important to Christians. He mentions 2 articles that lament the fact that Catholic hospitals have restrictions. He has seen this before in other contexts. The secular society essentially says, we appreciate you feeding, housing, and caring for the poor, but you must do it by advancing the worldview we prefer. If you don't, we will pass laws that violate your conscience. We'll call you bigots and misogynists when you resist. He uses an analogy to illustrate how liberals and progressives misunderstand religious faith. He says it's almost like some people believe a religious worldview is like a Jenga tower. You can pull out a few planks without causing a whole edifice to collapse. For critics of religion, they see any religious belief based on conscience as disposable if it contradicts the current politically correct view in society. These narrow Supreme Court rulings, as well as articles complaining about Catholic hospitals that hold to Catholic doctrine, illustrate why it is so important that the right judges and justices are nominated and confirmed to the federal courts. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here today. Find out more at StacyOnTheRight.com, at StacyOnTheRight on Twitter and Instagram. And right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Erielle Davidson of the Hoover Institute. She is frequent guest of the program, and we're really glad to have her on today. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Stacy. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
I know. I'm excited to speak to you. I know you're a contributor to The Federalist and townhall.com. And right now, there's a piece over at thefederalist.com about Ben Shapiro. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So actually, Ben Shapiro recently did an interview with Guy Benson on one of Fox Radio's station show called Benson and Harsh. And he discussed at length the Never Trump movement, where it stands as of now in 2018 and where it could possibly go in 2020. And what really struck a chord with me is he made two major points. He talked about how he was much more apt to vote for Trump in 2020, and the fact that he thought primarying Trump was or would be a big mistake. And you know, it's interesting because Ben Shapiro throughout the 2016 election was very much a never Trumper. You know, he was vocal on his daily podcast discussing how he was voting for neither Hillary nor Trump. But he did express an understanding for those who had decided to vote for Trump for a host of different reasons. You know, he really was sympathetic to the notion of voting for Trump, even if you weren't as enthused with him as a person, but, you know, saw it as a last hope against preventing Hillary from becoming president. So these were all things he was highly aware of. And I think what, you know, like I said, what struck a chord with me is that he said he himself would be much more likely to vote for Trump in 2020 due to the conservative track record that Trump has had up to this point, and how, you know, from a policy standpoint, he's done much better than many had anticipated.
So he's walking it back a little bit, and he's leveled some pretty tough criticism at the president since he was inaugurated, and he's never pulled any punches. But at this point, it sounds like he's saying he doesn't see a viable option out there to primary the president, and he thinks that on this trajectory, he's actually going to be pretty successful and could be the president for 4 more years after the first 4.
Yeah, and I think, you know, he made 2 big points. In addition to that, one of them being that, you know, as the left moves further left, and as they take this more progressive agenda and this more progressive direction and sort of move away from the establishment of the Democratic Party, we're starting to see more and more radical candidates pop up. You know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York's 14th district. You know, we're seeing lots of candidates that have more of a socialist tinge to them. And if that's the alternative to Trump, then, you know, he's basically saying there's just no way you can not vote for Trump. If that's the alternative. Now, not necessarily for him, but for voters in general, when they see those 2 options, they might be more inclined to vote for Trump just on the basis that, you know, what the left is putting forth is so radical, or could be so radical.
Yeah, I mean, I think what people are starting to notice is what, for me, what I said all along during the electoral cycle the last time was that, you know, obviously I was a Ben Carson person, right? That's who I thought would actually make it through the primary, and when he didn't, and so he was eliminated, and then I went to Ted Cruz because I felt, and I still do think he was the smartest one, and, you know, highest IQ, most knowledge of the Constitution. Yeah, so you know, Ted Cruz, in my opinion, would have been the next viable option, but he didn't win the contest for the primary. It was Donald Trump. And I remember immediately stating, you know, on my private social media who I would be supporting, which was the nominee, once that occurred. And so, you know, looking back, my evolution to where I ended up being during that cycle, it was a no-brainer for me because of who he was running against. And things have only gotten worse since then. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been had Hillary Clinton been the president. But if you look at the direction things have taken, I was just sharing in the segment before you joined us, about this lady who she's working out at the Planet Fitness, and she's just minding her own business, just working out. She's already changed. She goes back to change back into her, original outfit. And there's a man in there. He's dressed like a man, but he's putting on makeup on his face. He says he is transgendered. He's living as a woman, or he identifies as a woman that day. And she's the one who got kicked out of Planet Fitness. She's the one who got banned from all 66 of their stateside locations and written about in an LGBT newsletter about how she's just this horrible person for attacking a transgender, when all she wanted to do was change clothes. She never said he couldn't be there at all. She said, I'd like to change clothes in private. So when you're done putting on your makeup, if you could leave so I could change, that'd be great. Waited around an hour. Now, that might be one of those situations where, someone would say that's a one-off, but these stories are happening all over the country and we don't see any pushback from people who are in the leadership of the Democratic Party saying, no, wait, that goes too far. People should be able to change privately. Instead, they're saying, no, you have no right to privacy. You have to let people stand in and be with you who are of the opposite sex because they're claiming that there's something else and you have to honor that. It's as if we need to bow down to this new ideology, and we don't have anyone on the left pushing back on that. There's no one saying this is a bridge too far, which means it makes Donald Trump more viable as a presidential candidate going forward, because he's not that. It's not so much that he's the ideal, it's that he's not that.
Right. And I think what you're pointing out is exactly that there isn't someone there on the left saying that this is not normal behavior, that this is irrational. And it's interesting, you do have a few sort of red state Democrats who have, at least done a little bit or made a little bit of effort to dissociate themselves from this radical portion of the party. But you're right. I think this portion of the party tends to be the most vocal, tends to be the loudest, even if they're not numerically the majority. And I think that's going to end up hurting the Democrats when it comes to the 2018 midterms. I really do. I think that mentality is most certainly not conducive towards working towards a common goal, at least with the other side of the aisle. It's just, and again, it's a form of radicalism that the Democrats have not done a very good job of reining in.
So speaking of something a little radical, Erielle, it's this news that's out about Omarosa getting an actual phone, a cell phone, into the Situation Room in a meeting. She was in there to meet with John Kelly. Unbeknownst to her, he brought her in to let her go. Well, she must have suspected something because she took a phone in and recorded the conversation. But it's a breach of the secure compartment. And I think a lot of people are wondering, well, first of all, will she be prosecuted for that? I tend to say no, because Hillary Clinton's still running around. But do you think they're going to change their procedures, on like, I know I've been in the Eisenhower Executive Office complex, and when I was there were certain rooms that we walked by that you needed a card to swipe to get in, and there would be a little tiny, looks like a little nightstand or end table out there, and it would just be piled high with cell phones. And I asked the White House staffer we were there with, what's that? She said, those are secure rooms. You can't take your cell phone in. But I was I'm not a White House staffer. I was being escorted, but I was just walking around willy-nilly, under her supervision, and there's just piles of phones everywhere. So do you think they're going to change their procedures, or,
I mean, I wonder. I think what's surprising to me is that Omarosa was even in the White House to begin with. I think, her hiring was pretty controversial, and I do think that Trump had established a rapport with her prior to, ever getting into politics. And so I was somewhat sympathetic to that. I think we all like to hire people we know. Mm-hmm. And Trump is someone that's, supremely into loyalty in a lot of ways. He's not as much about, brute qualification, but more just about, can I trust this person? Is this person on my side? Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of why Omarosa was hired, is because he liked her. And so it was weird to me to see that she was someone who really ended up having it out for him in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And, because she was hired based on loyalty, but to see her sort of break from that trend and be, very much anti-Trump, I mean, she's really garnered a lot of fame from her recent media tour. Have you noticed? I think she was on the Today Show. I mean, she's she's really milking this for more than what it's worth. I think it's going to end up being sort of a nothing burger in a lot of ways, to bring up that term again. But, again, I was just shocked because she was hired based on her loyalty, and now she's someone that's ended up being, really much more anti-Trump than I think he would have ever anticipated.
It's almost like she was a tool, right? So they had the relationship from before, and that was the basis of the continuing relationship. And there was loyalty there because, as she has said many times, he connected her to business opportunities that she otherwise wouldn't have had. And because of that, she was able to grow her business, to go on many different other television shows, and et cetera, et cetera. And it raised her public profile. But then when he brought her on to do political things, I remember there being a lot of back channel saying, well, I'm not sure how this is going to work because she's not a Republican. So there were people who have been in politics for a long time who expressed concern privately that in representing the president on the Republican side, she wouldn't be adequate for the work because it's very difficult to be a Republican and a woman, and add on top of that, she's black. So there's this whole added layer of hostility that goes along with being a black conservative and working in Republican politics. But then she went on The View, and she went on a number of different media outlets, and she was a very strong defender of the president and his policies during the campaign. But I was just as shocked as you to see her actually make it into the White House, like into the West Wing. You know what I mean? Like I could see her working in one of the agencies.
No,
yeah, not in the White House, but like, somewhere else outside of the actual White House, I thought. But she made it actually into the West Wing where she had access to the president. And I thought to myself, well, this could go so fantastic or it could go so badly. And then I didn't think about it again. I had her on the show twice. I mean, I was taking her at face value, just hoping it would go well. It has gone so wrong now. But Erielle, let's be real here. We both work. We both know how it is. You need people. You need to not burn your bridges. You need references. How does she get hired anywhere else after this book tour is over?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I mean, Susie, I remember watching her when she was on The Apprentice. I was a big, faithful watcher of The Apprentice, the reality TV show that Trump basically ran, and he was picking somebody to work with him. I mean, I remember, and she was a flamethrower. Yeah. I mean, she really, truly, she's had this personality for years, approaching decades. And so this shouldn't have been a shocker. But, I question where she goes after this. I do think that you can make a lot of money by being part of the resistance or by being anti-Trump or being critical of Trump. We've seen it both within the political sphere. We've seen it within the media sphere. We've seen it just, in everyday life that there's some financial gain to be had from being oppositional to the president. I do believe that that's become the chic, the vogue thing within certain circles. And, there are people like Omarosa who are willing to capitalize on that. I really think she sees this as a business opportunity for herself.
Sure, but I mean, I guess for me, if I were on the left and she all of a sudden just flipped from, because some of the questions they're asking her are really the core of the whole thing. 93 minutes of airtime on NBC, ABC, and CBS for Omarosa's new book. 93 minutes. They gave barely 24 seconds to the return of the remains of the soldiers that we had left in North Korea. Barely 24 seconds to announce the return of those remains, but 93 minutes for Omarosa. I just have to say, I would not trust her. The question that I've heard asked is, well, if he said the N-word or if he was a racist, why did you defend him? Why? And she said, well, I was used.
Why would you work for him?
Yeah.
Why would you work for someone like that? If
I
you
wouldn't
really
have.
Felt that this was their personality and this is, there's something inherently wrong with them, such as being a racist, why would you work for them? Right?
And for years, like she not only worked with him for a year at the White House, but before that, she worked with him on and off for 15 years and was seen with him in public, seen at Trump Tower. If he'd used that word and it wasn't immediately recanted and an apology made, to everyone in the room who heard it, and I didn't feel it was sincere, then there's no way I could continue on, almost 2 decades, and that's his demeanor. Because if she heard it once, it means she heard racial slurs more than once. Because you're not just going to hear it one time. You're going to hear it on multiple occasions with someone who's comfortable enough to let you hear it the one time. And so I don't believe her that she heard that. Because if she heard it, then who else was in the room who heard it also? There should be someone to corroborate. It's just kind of unbelievable that, because she lacks credibility here, that she's been given so much media time.
Well, I mean, we saw it with all the books and the articles and the way the media has portrayed Trump. You know, credibility seems to be the last thing on the mind of politicos and pundits when it comes to reporting on Trump. You remember the Fire and Fury book?
Oh,
there wasn't a lot of fact checking that took place with that book. I mean, I've seen various articles. You and I have talked about this in the past. Articles that get published and the fact checking was just egregious, or didn't actually take place. So, you know, this is a pattern of behavior when it comes to the media sort of seizing on little tidbits of information about Trump without corroborating it or without going through the necessary channels to determine if it's actually true or not. I mean, this is, again, a pattern of behavior. We've seen it time and time again. What it really is doing is it's worsening the credibility of crisis that the media is going through right now by choosing to give attention to someone whose story has not been confirmed. That is hugely problematic.
It is. And what you just said, you know, take that, what Erielle just said, and put a cherry on top of it. And that's the complete, like all over America, people are checking out of these shows because of what you just said. Exactly people are like, what do you mean? And they're just letting it go. And the media doesn't seem to care. Thank you so much for coming on today. I will put your article in the live stream over at thefederalist.com. Great piece. Erielle Davidson, thank you so much for joining the show.
Always fun time. Thanks, Stacey. All
right. Talk to you again soon. So we'll be back with more Stacey on the Right, and we'll take your calls. If you'd like to call in, it's 866-963-2037. We'll be right back after this.
One of the first steps to becoming a Christian is recognizing our sinful nature. What makes this so difficult is that we have selective vision when it comes to our own issues. It's easy for me to see your faults, but when it comes to seeing my own, then my eyesight automatically gets bad. One surefire way to measure new birth in Christ is by opened eyes and a clear vision. Sometimes we can pass between having sight and having no sight because we have fallen asleep to the needs around us, or our perspective on those things that are eternal is distorted. Whatever the case, there is nothing more dangerous than having blurred vision and still thinking that it's clear. Don't measure your vision by your own standards. It will be warped and distorted every time, but rather measure it by God's standards. God desires that our eyesight remains clear. So how is your eyesight today? With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Here's Steve Tiber.
8 Days of Hope started after Hurricane Katrina, helping people in Bay St. Louis, Waveland, Mississippi, rebuild their homes back in 2005. Since then, this faith-based ministry has gone nationwide, and we've helped out dozens of cities, dozens of areas of the country after hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, or even snowstorms. And now you get a chance to be a difference maker. 8 Days of Hope 16. You can be the hands and feet of Jesus down in Houston from October 13th to October 20th. You can come for as little as 3 days or stay all 8 days. We provide the food and lodging. We're looking for skilled professional and people like me who are less skilled and just want to give back. For more information, go to our website, 8daysofhope.com. Click on the event, 8 Days of Hope 16. Read the FAQs and learn more about how you can make a difference with 8 Days of Hope.
Learn more and sign up to be a part of 8 Days of Hope 16 in Houston, Texas at 8daysofhope.com. That's 8daysofhope.com.
Securing America.
Most border agents speak fluent Spanish, but in El Centro, California, agents apprehend more Indian nationals than any group other than Mexicans. Here's Agent Justin Casterhone.
It's a very common area for Indian nationals to be crossing. Why? Because it's a path of least resistance.
The number of Indians apprehended in El Centro, a 70-mile stretch of border east of San Diego, soared from about a dozen in 2013 to over 3,000 so far this year. Why? Attorney Judy Wood, who's handled many Indian asylum cases, says Sikh men flee religious and political persecution, while women who marry outside their class or caste system fear assault.
People who are untouchables, the lowest caste, are basically not allowed to participate fully in society.
Agents say the Indian nationals typically pay a $25,000 smuggling fee, compared to about $8,000 for Central Americans. In El Centro, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The guys putting on a show, likewise, for the city.
Yeah, there's more people here this week than I think I've ever seen at a major championship. I don't know how many people have actually come through the gates. St. Louis is a great sporting town. They're very, very energetic.
Oh, they've been unbelievable. Not only supportive, but just so positive. You know, they've been supportive of, you know, all my playing partners and myself these first 3 rounds, and it's been a pleasure to play in front of them, and it really has. And you know, hopefully we can come back soon.
Welcome back to the program. That was Tiger Woods making some comments about the fantastic fans in St. Louis. They've been just literally a couple miles away from me here doing the PGA Tour, and they've had record attendance, and the traffic has been snarled up. And I would normally be just so annoyed by that, but so much economic impact brought by all of the people from all over the country converging on St. Louis and staying in our hotels and eating in restaurants, and Uber and Lyft have just been outstanding, picking the people up and taking them to the locations where they could get onto the charter buses to ride over to the location. And it's been some really cool jokes as well about how people who watch football, so football players need a rest while their fans need exercise. This is a joke. Do not Facebook message me. While golfers and their fans all get the same amount of exercise because they walk the course together. So I was listening to that joke and thinking, oh, how true. And I'm not a football fan, and you know, obviously not every football fan needs exercise, but it was funny that they were kind of comparing them, because I think the golfers and their fans feel like they're, you know, really trim and physically fit, and from the pictures, I guess they are. So they've had a really good time here, and I was glad to see it. You know, St. Louis gets so much bad press and bad news all the time nationally that it was nice to hear someone say something really great about the fans here in St. Louis. And I've seen a lot of great pictures online of people taking pictures in front of the 100th year of the PGA Tour and all of that. It's just been really fun. So we were talking a little bit about this Planet Fitness customer, and let's go to the phones, and we'll carry on the discussion about this Planet Fitness customer. Keith from Michigan, thanks for calling into the show.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, one thing that before I go into my my talk, is that I wanted to say thank you very much for your service.
Oh,
thank you for serving in the Air Force, and pleasure to working with some other Air Force people in my past.
Thank you for that.
My feeling, or something that I've observed, is that people who are on the left, just the person that you were interviewing just a little while ago was talking about how people on the left are, I don't know, in my opinion, it's like there's a frontal lobotomy that just happened. But it's, they smell blood in the water. A lot of people on the extreme far left have seen that they've been successful in carrying on a false narrative dealing with Judge Roy Moore and being able to destroy his ability to get into the Senate by using false accusations of things that happened in the past that petered out to nothingness, to a nothing burger, as other people have said. Is that they figured, hey, if it worked with him, let's do it to anybody else that we wanted to destroy. So I think that's what is happening. It's a new tactic that is now being processed.
You know, I got to say, Keith, it's not really new, because remember they did the same thing to Herman Cain. Herman Cain would have been the president of the United States had it not been for all of these allegations of groping of women, and all of the women who came forward at the end. Remember, there was one new one a week until he finally, quit. They were all seen at David Axelrod's condo in Chicago first. So all of these women went, and, just an odd coincidence that they visited David Axelrod. Then they made allegations through Gloria Allred against Herman Cain. And then when it became too much for his family to handle, the allegations and the destruction of his reputation, he stepped down. And then all of a sudden, the women didn't have any need to prosecute. They just all of a sudden felt fine about what happened to them. So I agree with you. It does tend to be a recurring theme. And what it does is it hurts the true victims of sexual assault and harassment who want to be heard. They feel less likely to come forward when false allegations are given credence, because everyone, they tend to think, well, I won't be believed. Everyone will think I'm just joining in on a bandwagon or something, or making things up, which is what is the problem. If you leave the allegations to the women who've actually been harmed, then you end up with, a much truer picture. And then you can, investigate and figure out what's true and try to go forward from there, as we do with any other crime. Thank you so much for calling the show. Let's go to Daniel in North Carolina. Hey, thanks for calling in.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome to the show.
Hello? Oh, okay. I just had a comment about the Omarosa deal that you were talking about. I really don't think it's any coincidence that she's leaking these tapes right before her book debuts. And if you notice on the interview with NBC this morning, she kept saying the name of her book, and that's no coincidence. She's trying to drum up support for that. And I think as far as her future employment, she can align with anybody on the left, and as long as she continues to bash Donald Trump, she will have a job. And the worst part about it is she claims to be a Christian, and I will let it go at that and let you comment. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for calling that. Yeah, so her husband is a pastor, and wow. So I don't know him. I've never seen anything of him online, like, his like public speaking, things like that. He seems like he's much more of a private person besides being a pastor. I have no idea what could possibly be going on there, and what, like, in her conversation with him about bringing forward this series of tapes and recordings and things like that, very dishonest dealing. And I'm even, Pierce Morgan has made allegations that she offered, intimate favors to him to do some things, to promote some of her work. So it's getting uglier and uglier the further it goes into it. I think you make a good point, though, that she will have a place to work on the left. But I guess when I say, who's going to hire her, I'm thinking of if you come out of a Republican administration and you've got a clean record where even if it was just a year, normally you can parlay that into a job at CNN or Fox News. You can definitely write a book. You can definitely make a really good living afterwards. Working in the White House, that's an elite position to come from, and not very many Americans can offer that perspective. And you can even go work for a think tank. You can, there's so many things you can do. If you look at Condoleezza Rice's career, and obviously she has a stellar education, and she was in the Ivy League, that's she graduated from Ivy League school, and she's been a professor at Ivy League schools, as well as doing other work and, kind of staying in politics just a tad too. But interesting that, she'll have some place on the left, but I was actually talking about respectable work, Anyway, Sandy from Texas. Thank you for calling into the show today.
Hi, Stacey. This is my first time to ever hear your show, and I'm so delighted that you took my call.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, so I have a question. Speaking back to when you were saying that, somebody in the Democratic Party has got to be a decent human and stand up and say to the far-leaning left people who are so radical in their party, kind of rein them in and say, we need to be decent now. No more of this, trolling Republicans and treat, it's sort of like, treat people as you would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. My question is, who do you know of in the Democratic Party that would be willing to do that? Because whoever does it is going to have their career ruined, and they will be crucified. Because anybody who has the slightest bit of dissent with their far left ideology is just obliterated. So I can't think of anybody on the Democratic left that would be willing to sacrifice themselves to try and pull their party back to decency.
Okay, so you make a good point there, Sandy, and I'll say this: Joe Lieberman has recently come out and said he feels like things are going too far. Another Democrat, I forget his name, is a House member, not really famous, said he feels like the party is being drugged to the left, where most people associate the Democrats with abortion almost exclusively, and he said our party is more than support for abortion. In fact, that's very little of what most Democrats care about. Democrats care about health care and, good working wages and fairness and things like that, and economic prosperity for people at the bottom of the income scale. And I was thinking to myself, well, I can remember the last time I heard a Democrat talk about, those things in a way that makes sense to regular Americans. And I just want to point out that it is supported by statistics, and some of the best work on that is Thomas Sowell has done some of the best work and research on how malleable we don't really have a class system, if you will. It's not a system, but if you look at where people fall on the economic ladder, we have the most mobility of any country on the face of the planet, where someone who's in poverty in this decade will be solidly in the middle class in the next decade, and by the third decade will be solidly at the very top of the income bracket for middle class, meaning they're almost upper middle class. And when you look at it that way, then you understand that it's not that we have this permanent underclass. The underclass is constantly moving. Now, there are people in this country who were born into wealth and they stay wealthy, but the upper class and wealthiest people are also, that group of people is constantly moving as well, people falling out of that upper income range. And so people are constantly moving around in this country and what they're able to attain. But traditionally speaking, the older you are in America, the more wealthy you have become over the years in comparison to where you started out. So that is something that is a hallmark of our meritocracy. And even when you factor in all the, they say, well, women don't earn as much money, blacks don't earn as much money, Hispanics don't earn as much, but still are able to make it into the middle and upper class. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And I tend to think, as a Christian, I truly believe, and I have operated this way, that whatever barriers exist in what I can see, permanent tan, woman, all the other stuff that I have going on that they're not my strong suits, that prayer overcomes all of that. Prayer and hard work. So you have to work hard to overcome whatever your, perceived limitations might be. And other people who have these built-in pluses where you might say, well, she's got this or he's got that, he's a white man, as if white men never struggle. It's the biggest misnomer ever that white men are just walking around and they're all wealthy and they never struggle and they never get sick, never have anything bad happen to them. That is something that is promulgated by people who just aren't being honest. The fact is, we all have struggles. We all have things that we're working to overcome. And I find that if I take it away from what I can see and do myself and just say, I'm going to work as hard as I can on this, I'm going to apply myself and I'm going to do my best, and I'm doing this because I believe this is what God wants me to do, and then pray over it, he takes over the rest. When I stop trying to do it under my own power. I mean, it's honestly, the minute I say, I'm just letting this go, I'm going to stop fretting over it, I'm going to stop thinking about it and just work as hard as I can and try to enjoy my life. And that's when I see movement. Not instantly. It's not like, because God is not here for our timing. We're here for his timing. But I think it's interesting that we have all of that going on. And I know there are others besides Joe Lieberman. But you're right. We saw last election cycle in 2015, actually, before the primary was over, there were a bunch of Democrats who were pro-life, who were told by Nancy Pelosi and others, Elizabeth Warren, that they had no place in the party, that the party couldn't really advocate for them or spend money on them because they were in the wrong place on what they call choice. That's pretty stunning. So I think it's disturbing because the Democrats that I know, and I know quite a few Democrats, I know some that are on the activist left. I mean, and they are genuinely nice people with families, but they're activist leftists. And then I know Democrats who are church going and they love the Lord, and they're some of the sweetest people you would ever meet. They just they vote with the Democrats. I don't know how that works. I really don't. And they say to me, I don't know how you would vote with the Republicans when they're racist or when they don't care about the poor. I know that's not true, but that is the perception that these Christian Democrats have of where the place where I am. So, I believe in, in all things we pray and dedicate ourselves to seeking God's will and trying to be obedient, because that's where the rubber meets the road. When we're obedient, God is able to work in us and through us most when we are obedient and prayerfully fearful and wanting to do what he has for us to do. All politics aside, he's actually not going to say at the judgment seat, what political party were you? That's not going to factor into it. It's going to be whether or not we knew what the Bible said and did that. So when we get back, we have hour 2 of this program. Same bat channel, same bat station. We'll be right back after this important news from One News Now. Stay there.
I'm Miki Addison of Urban Family Talk, a division of American Family Radio. We're calling on Christians to push back against the enemy's attack on families. To that end, I'd like to invite you to our Marriage, Family, and Life Conference. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. President Trump has signed the Defense Authorization Bill. Speaking to military service members at Fort Drum, New York, the president talked up the need for military personnel and improvements.
We will replace aging tanks, aging planes and ships with the most advanced and lethal technology ever developed, and hopefully we'll be so strong we'll never have to use it. But if we ever did, nobody has a chance.
The spending bill also includes a pay increase for troops. President Trump is questioning whether special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into so-called Russian election interference and Trump's presidential campaign will be dropped now that the FBI has fired one of Mueller's former investigators. Former agent Peter Strozk's lawyer said Monday that he had been fired from the agency over text messages that were critical of Trump. Mueller removed Strozk from his team immediately last year once the text messages were discovered. A former White House senior staffer may need a lawyer after releasing taped recordings of her and other members of the White House staff. Fox's John Decker has more from Washington.
The White House is exploring legal options after former senior aide Amoroso Manigault Newman released secretly recorded audio of White House Chief of Staff John Kelly in the Situation Room. President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, spoke on Fox and Friends.
She's certainly violating national security regulations, which I think have the force of law.
However, it is not illegal to record someone without their knowledge in the District of Columbia. President Trump earlier on Twitter writing about Amoroso, people in the White House hated her. She was vicious, but not smart. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
Many of the teachers who converge on their state capitals and protest this past spring are hoping to return soon, this time as lawmakers. Hundreds of teachers are running for office in November elections. They say they want to be at the table when legislatures make decisions about public education spending and teacher wages, issues that were at the root of walkouts in states including Arizona, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. Promoters of doctor-assisted suicide make promises to get the laws passed, but those commitments are not necessarily carried out. AFN's Charlie Butts reports.
If someone in California encourages or helps a person commit suicide, they can be found guilty of a felony crime. But a new measure yet to be signed by the governor turns that thinking on its heels. Alexandra Snyder is an attorney and executive director of Life Legal Defense Foundation.
The new bill would legalize aiding, advising, and encouraging suicide in cases where somebody has been given a terminal diagnosis.
Yet that was denied by proponents in order to get the bill passed and signed into law.
And this is the exact thing the sponsors of the assisted suicide law told us would never happen. Oh, we're going to have all these safeguards in place to make sure that people are not compelled in any way to commit suicide or are not, pushed over the cliff, as it were.
People can encourage and help facilitate an assisted suicide and escape a felony crime if the individual has a terminal illness that would qualify, even if the individual pushing a person to kill themselves has a financial gain resulting from the death. It also represents an expansion of the state's assisted suicide law, which is currently tied up in appeals courts. Life Legal Defense Foundation is fighting that legal battle. I'm Charlie Butts.
In final news this hour, a reason to consider getting rid of the old office fax machine. Checkpoint, a cybersecurity firm in Israel, says its research discovered security flaws in tens of millions of fax machines. They say the machines can be used as a backdoor for hackers to get into an organization's network. The hack works by sending an image file through a phone line or a file that the fax machine thinks is an image file, but the file is coded to contain malware. When a company receives the photo, the image is decoded and uploaded into the fax printer's memory, allowing hackers to take over the device and spread the malicious code through the network. That is the news for this hour. Find more news at onenewsnow.com.
My name's Tim, I'm 17. All the male role models in my life did drugs, so it's no wonder I ended up just like them. I was down to 90 pounds when I came to Teen Challenge, but now I'm healthy and drug-free.
If you know an adult or teenager who's struggling with a chemical addiction, Teen Challenge can help. Call us today at 417-581-2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I know better than anybody how important it is for us to win this election because I see up close and personal what the Republicans and this president are doing.
Under the Trump presidency, I think we're seeing that across America as the middle class is understanding that their values do go along with the Republican Party. Firefighters and public safety unions are the forgotten constituency of the Republican Party.
Omarosa says that she has taped in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. We've heard the tapes. And this is a national security issue. This is not just about a book anymore. She's giving receipts and she's now in trouble.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome into the program. I want to go first to a caller who held over from last hour. Thank you so much for holding. Jonathan from North Carolina. Great to speak with you.
Well, hi, Stacey. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing.
Hey, I believe that what Omarosa has done this time has set black-white relations back, I'm not kidding, 30 years. And here's what I mean. I own a small cleaning business, and I go about from business to business trying to, make accounts. And I'll talk to the business owners, and I'll be sweeping their floors, cleaning their trash, wiping their countertops, and I'll see these people and how they express themselves and their opinions, and what they put on their desks. And just when I saw that Kwame Jackson fellow and Tara Dowdell and this Randall Pickett, I think this happened back when Trump was running for office. They held a conference where they came in front of the TV, in front of the cameras. These were black folks that Trump had brought into his organization. And they all said that their boss was a racist. Now, Randall Pickett, he later on went on to say, you know why I think he was a racist? Because when I was brought into the executive level of his organization, and I went to my first executive meeting. I was the only one that looked like me in the organization. And to him, that was proof that Trump was a racist. But Trump himself had selected this man for the organization. Now, up to that point, that's what those folks were saying. But Omarosa had a different opinion. But now we see Omarosa has stabbed Trump in the back just like those folks did. And I'm telling you, I'm not asking, I'm telling you, there were there were white business owners all over this country who saw that and said, you know what? Blacks make great janitors. Blacks make great landscapers. It'll be a cold day, you know where, before he ever enters into the executive boardroom, and I trust him with the company's numbers, facts, and figures. And I just am sickened. I'm sickened at what has happened in the name of entertainment to see this woman destroy the chances of so many wonderful black folks moving up in corporate America. Before your time.
Thank you for calling in and expressing that. And I have to say, so my initial thought would be, yeah, a lot of people who are looking for positions, Omarosa's damaging, the reputations for women and et cetera. But I tend to look at it a little differently now. Like I would have totally agreed with you some years ago. And there may be some people who would think twice or three times about hiring someone based on what Omarosa has done. But I really think that people who are hiring and they're looking for a quality applicant are already going to have weeded out Omarosa types to begin with. And what I mean by that is Omarosa was a reality show star. And I'm like Erielle Davidson. My husband and I, our kids were of the age where they were going to bed between 7:30 and 8 back when The Apprentice was on. And so our kids would go to bed and we would get our snacks and we'd watch The Apprentice. And I remember her being on then, and I remember a lot of people posting on Facebook, black women saying, this woman makes black women look bad. And I remember agreeing. I thought, people will see her and think, oh, I better not hire a black woman. But the fact is, your demeanor when you show up, like you were talking about the work that you do in your cleaning company, people know you, they know your work, they know your reputation, and the people that work for you are of the same caliber as yourself. And so they know that about the caller, Jonathan from North Carolina. It's the same thing when people, the stereotype is, you see someone, you kind of stereotype them based on who you know or what you believe about people. But then when you talk to them and you start to get that interaction, then you realize, oh, this person is, you change your mind about what caliber of person they are based on their actions. It will have a negative impact, invariably, it will have some, but I don't think it's going to be as far reaching. And I do think one of the reasons why Omarosa even had a place to go in is that there aren't a ton of black women on the right who are willing to move to DC and put themselves under that scrutiny to work in, the Trump White House. And he had to keep people in there who he felt like he trusted, and he had this long history with her. And so it was the loyalty that got her in. Turns out she didn't have any loyalty at all. She was only there for what she could get. I just don't think, I think if you have a good education or, in place of that traditional education, you have the experience and you present yourself well and you are on time, you do, you do the job, you show up prepared to do the job, and people can tell that you're working in that way. And very few people come in at that boardroom level. Most people come in somewhere below that and work their way up. And so you have to prove yourself. It might make it a little harder for women in business right now, while this is going on. But I would hope that people would take individuals that they're working with at their face value instead of saying, oh, you must be like Omarosa. I mean, we all have our bad moments, but I just watch any of the clips from that show, and that is a completely unique situation, that whole Omarosa mentality in her, which is, again, Omarosa was found to be disloyal during the competitions, and that's why she got fired. At least 2 of the times that she was fired on The Apprentice, it was because she was disloyal, and Donald Trump said, I hate disloyalty. So it's interesting that she was brought into the White House. It kind of baffles the mind how she made it in there. So thank you so much for holding over, and great call. So here's the thing. in all of this, like, you got her, she was fired from the White House. Turns out it wasn't true that she, resigned after a year, that she was scheduled to leave January 20th. It turns out she was let go, which brings us to Peter Strozk being fired, which I mentioned in hour one. Now, people have been asking this. I asked it, and other pundits bigger than me by far have asked, why has Peter Strozk still been paid by the FBI when, all of this wrongdoing went on? Well, it turns out he was finally let go, even though OPM, the Office of Professional Management, didn't recommend that he was fired. He was actually suspended for 60 days, and they were, going to basically, you keep your nose clean, you get to stay on. One more mistake from you and you're out of here. Well, it turns out, yeah, he really damaged the reputation of the FBI. He besmirched the reputations of so many fantastic agents out there who do amazing work and bring horrible criminals to justice. And now, Office of Professional Responsibility has, decided that that last chance agreement would be good enough, but Goldman and Bowditch, who are in the FBI in management, they basically said, you got to go. Now, I think some people will say, that these two gentlemen are operating and, doing something for President Trump. But this is not an action that's being taken for President Trump to do anything for President Trump. This action is being taken to send a message to the remaining agents, 33,000 I think it is, who work for the FBI, that if you decide to use your work phone to text your girlfriend that you're having an affair with while you're married and she's married, and you will be found out, and that it will cost you your job. This is not about, Puritanism or getting in people's personal business. They texted on their work phones and used encrypted messaging so that their spouses couldn't find out they were cheating. And then while they were cheating and having the affair on work hours, using government resources paid for by the taxpayers of the United States, these individuals also engaged in what could only be termed as, plans to materially impact an American election. They say they only texted about it and they didn't do anything, but you can't really believe that. You can't read the text messages and really believe that that's what happened. So I don't think it's a surprise that he was fired. I mean, I'm not even slightly shocked. Only thing that's surprising to me is that it took this long. And even knowing how slowly the government moves, it's surprising to me that it took this long. So speaking of interesting individuals, because we've been talking about Omarosa and now Peter Strozk, Alex Jones. So you might have heard that he was simultaneously booted off of all of the major social media networks. Not everything, but a lot of his sites were purged from the Google search engine. On Facebook, 4 or 5 of the pages that he has were taken down. His YouTube was eliminated, and he was making a significant amount of money from that. Well, it turns out that since Silicon Valley decided to restrict his free speech, and, this is not a statement about the Sandy Hook birth truthism that he does or the 9/11 truthism. You guys know I'm not into that. I think that is absolute bunk, and he should really stop and take a couple weeks off from working and just think about do you really believe that? Or are you just doing that because it gets you clicks? Anyway, it turns out that even though these actions were taken against him to limit his reach, according to website ranking service Alexa, his traffic has exploded because 90% of the people who visit his website actually get there by typing the website into the search engine. They just type it in and go straight to his site. So he gets 10% of his traffic from, all of the different social media websites referring traffic to him. But he hosts his own videos on his website. So the self-hosting means while he has stuff on YouTube and he streams to YouTube, he's not in danger of having his traffic sources cut off, because if you can't find him on YouTube, but you want to watch him, you can just go to his website and watch him there. It's kind of fantastic. You got Facebook, Apple, YouTube / Google, and Spotify acting together to shut him down. He was banned by iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, MailChimp, Discus, LinkedIn, Flickr, Pinterest, YouTube, and Facebook. I mean, isn't that amazing? They all acted together to get rid of him. You don't have to like what he's putting out there. You can even find it repugnant. These same sites have pornography on there. Isn't that something? They're making judgments about what Alex Jones says, which I come on. But they got the pornography on their sites. I mean, go to YouTube. It's just crazy, the stuff that's up there. The jihadi training videos. I mean, you just go check out what's on there. Or in fact, don't. Just take my word for it. You don't want your brain stained. But they have all that stuff up there, but they're censoring Alex Jones. So he sells these supplements that are supposed to do all this stuff, like, health supplements, drops and pills and stuff like that. They're supposed to make you healthier, help you with your workouts and whatnot. They were stripped of their Amazon choice tags. So on Amazon.com, when you are looking at a product, it'll say Prime, or it'll have a little label on it that says Amazon Choice, which is basically a recommendation for you to buy it. And they have the screen grab showing that it said Amazon's Choice, and now after that little label is gone. Well, you can still get to the content via apps on Google and Apple. You can still download the apps from the App Store for Apple, and through the Android users store, you can still get it there. And as of Friday, close of business, the show's phone app remained near the top of the charts in both the Apple app and Google Play stores. InfoWars Official, an app that lets viewers stream Jones's show and read news of the day, was ranked 4th among trending apps on the Google Play Store on Friday. But here's the cake taker. 5.6 million people, according to Jones, subscribed to the InfoWars newsletter within 48 hours of learning that he was banned from YouTube. They tried to knock him down, and he just got right back up. We'll be back with more right after this. Stay there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. If we can get our families on track, a lot of society's problems could be solved. The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is from Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hello, I'm Pastor Joseph Parker, and this is Daily Time in the Word. It's our goal to help you better understand the great blessing of spending time in God's Word every single day. Today I want to remind you about an important prayer tool that we've made available to our listeners. It's something we simply call Kingdom Prayers, and it has about 9 different prayers that are based on the Word of God or that come straight from the Word of God. And I want to encourage you to make it your goal to use them on a daily basis for you and your family. But also we want to encourage you to take time to teach and train them to pray every single day as well, and specifically praying the Word of God. One of the prayers listed is, of course, the Lord's Prayer. And, of course, that's a great prayer the Lord Jesus taught us as disciples to pray on a daily basis. I want to take time to pray it through now. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Again, the Lord's Prayer is a great prayer to help and encourage you to pray each day. And we want to encourage every parent listening to pray it with your children every single day as well. It's a great kingdom prayer, and it's also a prayer that accomplishes great things in the spirit realm every day that we pray it together as a family. The email to get the prayer tool called Kingdom Prayers is jparker@afa.net. Again, that's jparker@afa.net. Please email us, and we'd be glad to send it to you, and I hope you'll put it to great use.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, welcome back to the show. We will have our guest up next in just a couple of minutes, working on getting that together for you. Head over to afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Check out the content that we're putting up for you. And definitely keep in mind that Alex Jones is defying what has turned out to be a really huge censorship push. And I'm not using him as an example because I love him pushing these conspiracy theories, but I'm showing you by sharing this that the power is really, it lies with, Facebook's powerful. Sure. But Facebook can't stop you from typing your favorite website into the engine, into the search engine, and going there. And sometimes if I find a new website that I like, I'll leave the window open on my laptop, but other times, most of the time, I actually just type it out and print that piece of paper up and put it on my bulletin board so that when I'm in my office working and I'm going to the websites that I'm used to going to, I'll see it and I'll say, oh yeah, I wanted to check that one out, and I'll keep checking it out. And if it's, if it's something that I'm continuing to like, I'll keep going there, because relying on Facebook means they curate the news for you. They have actually decreased the number of people that like my radio show page, how many of them get to see my content. Every month, I get at least 10 messages from people who say, I thought you'd stop doing a show. I haven't seen you in a month. One lady said she hadn't seen me in 2 years. She was surprised to see that the page had grown and that my show had gone from the weekend to during the day. And now, out of sight, out of mind, obviously. I was kind of surprised that she didn't miss it after 2 years, and then it just showed up in her feed again. And she was like, oh my goodness, yeah, I did used to like listening to that. But that's the point. If you rely on Facebook and YouTube, et cetera, to show you what your preferences are, then they'll show you what they want you to see. Decide what you like, type it in, visit it. It's basically you see, you like, you buy, but not letting them decide what you're going to consume. So the quote from him, and there are some other quotes here, but he's into cursing, so we're not going to share those. When he was speaking to the Daily Mail, he just let fly. But he did say, the quote from him that he provided here, because I play devil's advocate, because I play both sides, they've taken me out of context. They're using me as a test case to try to bring an EU style of web censorship. They've got mainline Democratic senators saying they ought to restrict Fox News, Tucker Carlson, Matt Drudge, the president himself. They are misrepresenting what I've said and done and are using that to set a precedent for internet-wide deplatforming, censorship beyond what Russia does, what China does, ahead of the midterm election. The whole thing is fake. Looking at InfoWars' stats, and that was Alex Jones, a little over 10% of their pre-ban traffic in July came from social media, with about half of that, so about 5% coming from Facebook. So he's going to survive because most of his traffic is direct. People just type in InfoWars and they get there. Now, or going to a bookmark. Now, in terms of dollars and cents, the website Social Blade estimates that over the last 30 days, InfoWars' YouTube channel received a little over 17 million views, and average YouTube ad revenue is around $2 per 1,000 clicks. InfoWars undoubtedly demonetized for much of that because YouTube just shut them down. That's probably costing him upwards of $400,000, that demonetization. And it's happened to others who are not conspiracy theorists, who do not post offensive content other than it's the truth, such as Louder with Crowder. He was recently deplatformed. Well, not deplatformed. He's still there, but he's demonetized with no warning, no explanation. They just took his ability to put ads on. And when they took it from me, they said it was because I had too few hours viewed over the past 12 months. So I met the standard, but since that wasn't over the past 12 months, they took away my ability to use ads. Lucky for me, I monetized just a few of my videos, so I didn't care since I wasn't earning money from them. But Steven Crowder, with over 1 million YouTube subscribers, they just put a huge chunk they took a huge chunk out of his income. So the flow of new traffic that has been driven to Infowars.com is paying a much higher CPM because it comes directly to him as opposed to getting split with YouTube. And it's entirely possible that if newfound site visitors stick around after finding out that he's been deplatformed by all of these different things, he could end up making more money now than he did before they tried to censor him, which is part of the reason why censorship doesn't really work. All right, let's go to our guest. We have Reverend Robert Martin. He's the pastor of Hope Central Church in Central Los Angeles. Reverend Martin, thanks for joining the show today.
Great to be here. Thank you, Stacey.
It's good to talk to you. So you actually have some reflections on the one-year anniversary of Charlottesville and how the church can lead the fight against racism and hatred.
Yes, I was thinking about some particular things in relation to the church and how it should react to these situations. Of course, sad to say that racism is something that's with us and it's ingrained in so many people, but the church has to be above that, and the church can be. As a matter of fact, on the day of Pentecost, when the New Testament church began, it began as a multi-ethnic, multicultural institution that affected the world in profound ways. And the church can do and must do the same. We must be the same as it was originally. And the only way we can do that is by being what the church was in this very Genesis. To do that, of course, I think the church has to be very intentional, has to be steadfast, has to be intentional in outreach and acceptance, treating everyone as the brothers and sisters that they are, regardless of color, creed, or any other thing. And I think the church can do that. That's where it begins, because politics can change structure, but only God can change the hearts of men. And at the root of it, I think racism is ultimately a spiritual matter that only God can really transform, and man has very great difficulty in doing so.
Sure. I think that racism is a sin, and it has to be dealt with as all sin. Repent and turn away. And that's done through the power of the Holy Spirit. The Lord helps us with when we're truly repentant. But do you feel like the conversation surrounding race and the constant focus on race that is kind of elevating these tiny groups to national stature, that is what God would want us to do, to constantly talk about race and to constantly make it our chief problem in this country when there are so many other big things that are going on that we really could be making more headway on?
Well, I think you're right. We made so much improvement. It's amazing the improvement that have been made in this area. But I do think there's a vocal minority that just doesn't want to accept that. And basically, I think they're just looking for platforms to speak their ill will. And this happens to be one area that they focus on. But there's been so much. I mean, I pastor a church. I'm blessed to pastor a church that has blacks, whites, Hispanics, and everybody gets along and treats everybody the same. Mm-hmm. And I see that in a lot of places, in organizations and churches. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it should be, and that's the way it must be. But I do think that our culture is so much vitriol, so much hatred, and all that's just filtering around through the airwaves and people with their social media platforms that they use to do that. And I do think it's out of hand. I think people are majoring on something that's not quite as major as they think it is at this point in our history.
So, Reverend Martin, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I wonder if there isn't a way for us. So, we have this history of slavery in our country, but we also have a number of different things in our country that are totally unique to America, that we fought a civil war over slavery and we lost, 700,000+ Americans died in that war. And we had, blacks fighting alongside whites in that war on both sides of the conflict. And afterwards, it was a difficult time. There was healing that was needed. There was the Jim Crow South, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are a part of our history, but we can be very comforted in the fact that as a country where the majority of us are Christians, we have absolutely come back from that. Like you mentioned your church being, just it looks like God's kingdom. There's some of everybody in there. I go to a church like that. Our family attends a church where there's just, you look around and there's every possible type of person you can think of is sitting right there. We're all sitting there together, looking in the same direction, listening to the same pastor. Can we not find a way to kind of unify around that and make a concerted effort to refocus on another issue as Christians, so that something can be done on another issue, on poverty, or on we had a guest, or we will be speaking with shortly later this week, to a pastor who is, his primary thing is getting the recidivism rates for people who've been incarcerated down, so that they're not ping-ponging back into prison. And he believes the church is the place to do that. Do we not have something else we could be working on instead of constantly talking about racism?
No doubt about that. And the church has stepped up to the forefront of some of the issues, like you said, even slavery. The abolition movement was birthed from churches, even suffragette, all these suffrage movements and suffragettes, all these different things have happened. Have had a church background, and the church has done great in so many instances. And I just think what's happened at this point is it's like someone has just opened the window that everybody can see into their own hearts and their fury. And social media is just fanning the flames of that, I think. People are just getting out of control with it. These different marches you have, and people attacking cops, attacking one another. It's just like it's a fury in the hearts of this group of people, but yet the media is just magnifying it to where it looks like that's the norm, when it's not the norm. The norm is people in churches of whatever color and creed, hand in hand, worshiping God together, praying for one another, and that's the truth, and that's the majority. And it's sad that there's so much emphasis being placed on something that is really, in the grand scheme of things at this point, minor. The United States, I think, has done an excellent job coming through the stains and blemishes on its history to get to the point where it is now. And the progress that has been made should be able to continue. And the church has to focus on that, focus on, like you said, other things. There's so many things that need to be done, and we lose our vision when we get focused and bogged down in something that isn't as large as people tend to make it out to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned social media, Pastor, and I want to touch on that. What is your thought on the proper role of social media in the life of a Christian? Because I'm on social media. I used to do so much more with it than I do now, and I feel like that's because the Lord has kind of been pulling me back, saying, look, you can be on there, but don't you think you need to be reasonable and efficient with it? And also, I have to judge what it does to me. If I'm on social media and it's making me angry, then I should probably shut it down and go do something outside, balance, so that I think people are really kind of running around angry from what they're reading on social media, because there is so much bad news and it is so easy to get. What's the proper role for us as Christians? You feel like what God would have us to do with our social media?
Well, first of all, I think when people use the way they do it, it becomes a huge distraction to life itself. You can have people sitting at a table and nobody's communicating. They're all on their phones playing games or texting someone in a different state or whatever, and it just tends to disconnect people. And as far as how to deal with it, people have to learn to limit it. I try to be as positive as possible. Some people tend to chase every rabbit, I've got to respond to this, I've got to respond to that, and get all worked up and angry about it. But nobody's going to change anybody's mind on social media. These people that come on, they have their opinions, and that's just the way it's going to be, and there's no reason to fight. A dog might fight with a skunk and it can win, but it's not worth it. It's not worth the smell and the stench that comes with it.
Well, that's a good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people lower themselves into that and just feel like, well, I have to. I have to defend this. It's not all about defending. It's not all about contending. It's about being. It's about being, a light, being a positive force. And I think there needs to be a lot more positive things on social media instead of like I said, just jumping every little rabbit hole here and there, chasing things, and have to say this, have to say that. No, we don't have to say a lot of things. We just want to. It almost becomes a pride issue to us that we have to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think if we spent more time praying and less time playing like that, we'd probably be a lot better off.
And that's some fantastic advice for us to end this segment on. I agree with you as someone who I used to, you get into the slap fights and you want to make sure the person knows the true facts, and you keep going at it until, you're almost exhausted with beads of sweat on your forehead. And we're talking about just typing with your thumbs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We all get sucked into it. So there's no judgment or condemnation. It's just us kind of acknowledging that we probably aren't going to change people's minds on social media, but we can pray about the issues, be informed, pray, and then go where God would lead us to really action items that we can work with, as you said, in our churches, getting something going at church that can be a help instead of only because we think we're doing something on social media, and some of it is impactful, but a lot of it isn't. So I think your advice is great for the listeners, and for me specifically. I never feel like I'm where I need to be with it. It's a constant work in progress. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you, Reverend Robert Martin, pastor of Hope Central Church in Central LA. Thank you for joining the program today.
Actually, it's Louisiana, by the way.
Oh, Louisiana. I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Louisiana.
I'm in the deep South, so I know some of the stuff I'm talking about.
Well, there you go.
But there's a profound change even in the South, though. For the most part, people get along if people just let them, I think.
Amen. I agree with you. Thank you so much for that correction. It's Central Louisiana, Hope Central Church.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining the program today.
Thank you so much. God bless you, Stacey.
God bless. Okay, when we get back, we will be doing more of the program. I'm going to talk to you about Minds. It's another social media site that I just discovered. Stay there.
My father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. I had lunch with Steve Green, the CEO of Hobby Lobby, the other day. Okay, I ate lunch with about 300 other people while Mr. Green spoke about Hobby Lobby's founding and how their family walks out their faith through the company. Mr. Green showed photographs of his parents' dining room, piled high with frames that he and his siblings earned 7 cents an hour to assemble. Today, that company is a multi-billion-dollar international concern. Mr. Green spoke of their latest project, the Museum of the Bible, which is both a technological marvel and a thing of unbelievable beauty. What a legacy of excellence the Green family has left for others to emulate. Most of us will never run a billion-dollar company or design and finance a museum, but our daily work is no less important in God's eyes. Whether it's loving and supporting our spouse, raising godly children, or performing our work duties with excellence, God sees and rewards hard work done as unto him. That's encouraging. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at staceyontheright.com.
Foreign Dispatch.
United States and Colombian government officials are pledging renewed efforts to fight drug trafficking in Colombia. Critics claim they're returning to failed efforts in a losing fight against cocaine production. Fox News was the only television crew to join UN Ambassador Nikki Haley as she watched police destroy a coca field in northern Colombia. She says the U.S. and Colombia are focused on destroying the plant before traffickers can process it into cocaine and ship it to the United States.
This is where it comes from.
We are at the source of where all of that comes from. And so we have to go to the source. We've got to cut the supply.
Colombia once sprayed the fields from airplanes with herbicide, though suspended the program 3 years ago after the World Health Organization determined the compound it used probably causes cancer. The new government here wants to resume spraying. Haley says the government is looking for a safe alternative. Though development experts say spraying these crops only hurts farmers and that coca production easily can move somewhere else. In Colombia, Rich Edson, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Unions have become the political arm of the Democratic Party. Unions need to focus back on the middle class, on the things that made America great. I'm Frank Ritchie. I'm a battalion chief in the city of New Haven, Connecticut. So in 2016, the executive board took a simple vote to change course. We voted to disassociate from the UPFA. They just wouldn't honor our choice. They kept coming after us, bill after bill. They sent us to collections. They called our families, or they even called my mother. Firefighters should be fighting fires. Instead, we're fighting union bureaucrats. Unions fail when they go outside of work and they try to weigh in on social issues.
Oh, welcome back. I thought that was a fascinating piece by the firefighter union president, and he was talking about how they didn't want political representation. They just wanted to be able to have their union advocate for them on pay and benefits. They didn't want donating to the Democrats. They didn't want activism. They just wanted representation. And when they decided to create their own union, their union said, you aren't allowed to leave. And this is the problem. So I'm not against unions. I'm against these kinds of illegal activities. Are you saying that, honestly, a person works for a place and a bunch of individuals decide to unionize, and then a couple decades later, those same individuals or new individuals decide the original union isn't serving them well, so they want to create their own union, and the original union says, no, you are belong to us. Rub the lotion on its skin. That's craziness. That is not okay. So I just think a lot of people are getting fed up with not being represented and paying for things that they aren't getting, and so they're taking a stand, and those guys are doing that. So when we talk about social media, not to add fuel to the flames, but there is a site that I just saw an article about it today, and it's been around for a while, so I'm a little late to the game, but it's called Minds.com, and it's blockchain. And so blockchain means that the owners of Minds.com cannot set up software within it to track you or to sell your online behavior to other people. And so I wanted to see what it was about, because I've seen so many other ones like Vero and Gab, which was recently just deplatformed by a bunch of different people, which was supposed to be the alternative to Twitter for free speech. And I have an account on there, and I signed up because it's the same thing like this Minds. I thought it would be something that would be a viable alternative to Twitter. This one is supposed to be a combination of all of those things, because you have latest channels, posts, videos, images, blogs, groups, and options. You have a news feed similar to Facebook, but it's, you post whatever you want. And apparently you can get paid in cryptocurrency for doing certain things. For the most part, it looks a lot like a stripped down Facebook, which is actually pretty cool. There's less to see on the side. There are no ads that I can see just yet. And then when you click on channels, you see a bunch of people who've signed up. I see Alex Jones is on here. And then on videos, there are a ton of ads for videos. There's some Alex Jones content on here. They're not ads. They're the thumbnails for the videos that you can watch. So I haven't had a chance to explore it a ton, but the article that was written about it is over at the Daily Caller. And they said that Facebook, Google, and Twitter have come under fire for censoring conservative voices. Lawmakers are struggling to decide how best to end the practice at all, and Minds.com is a fast-growing free speech alternative that emphasizes transparency and privacy. And so I've got nothing against Facebook, and I really enjoy, like, the time that I'm on Facebook looking at other people's babies and looking at videos of grandmas dancing on cruise ships and stuff like that. That's awesome. That's the kind of stuff that you want to kind of unplug and go check out some fun stuff. I love the fact that Facebook has groups and that they also have events. So if there's something political going on in my town, it will alert me, hey, you know, this is going on, or a friend is going to this. You might want to check it out. I like that. But I don't like the fact that Mark Zuckerberg seems completely immune to the criticisms that have been leveled against him of late. He keeps making the same apology he's been making for the entire life of Facebook, and what he's doing to conservative voices. And I know it's not him sitting behind a computer, you know, like a madman doing it himself, but he says he's ultimately responsible for everything that goes there. He's the majority owner of Facebook, and he's the one who's allowed it to develop into this thing where there's different treatment for different types of people. So let me explain to you how blockchain works, because I'm just learning this myself. And I think I'd had blockchain, like I'd read about it before, but it never hurts to be refreshed so you know exactly what you're talking about. Minds.com runs on blockchain. It's the only social media platform that does. And blockchain works like this. An individual makes a transaction request. That request is processed in a person-to-person network of computers called nodes. Nodes then validate the transaction. Once the transaction is validated, the network creates a new block, which is attached to all other transactions, and then the transaction is complete. So the transaction can be anything from financial to a message or a video. That makes blockchain unique in its incorruptibility, because every transaction is recorded and stored, and that makes fraud nearly impossible. So some of the people are getting fed up with Facebook and going to Minds, and it's a hybrid between all three companies. And the Minds CEO and co-founder Bill Ottman explained his alternative to Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. He talks about the transparency, that you can look at how Minds functions and see that it's not spying on its users. It's a hybrid between a decentralized and centralized network. And he says, the owner and creator of Minds, he says it is the future. He says the foundational principles of Minds, which is privacy, transparency, free speech, that those things are essential, and that all of the code is open source, meaning anyone can look at it. And he says users can boost their accounts or posts much like an ad to their peers or the entire network to earn exposure and organically grow a base of followers. And while Facebook and Twitter can shadow ban conservatives, users can look at Minds code and see that it doesn't and isn't capable of doing that. Minds doubled its active user base in July and now has over 1.4 million users from a wide range of political beliefs, including conservatives and liberals and non-political users that just want to discuss their favorite movies with users of similar interests. And he says there needs to be an ethical alternative. And he doesn't like the way Facebook, Twitter, and Google are punishing certain pages. So the front page, when you go there to sign up, and it was a really simple sign-in that doesn't require a Facebook account, hint, hint, to other app developers, the Crypto Social Network, open source decentralized platform for internet freedom. So it's interesting. And Gab-I has effectively been destroyed by Apple and Google because it can't grow anymore because you can't find it on anywhere, which is kind of crazy. They say they violated hate speech. And so he also talks about the Streisand effect, which is when attempts at censorship backfire because of the publicity that's brought to the subject that has been censored. It's a key example of why censorship doesn't work. Peer-reviewed evidence shows that censorship amplifies violence like the Streisand effect because radical ideas are further radicalized, which we saw in the story I shared with you last segment about Alex Jones. So it's not that Stacey on the right, supports Alex Jones. It's that 5.4 million people who were new to the Alex Jones experience learned of him and subscribed to his newsletter because he was censored by all of these other platforms. So had they simply left him alone, 5.4 million people would continue on about their day and their lives, never knowing anything about him. Now they will learn what he's sharing. They will be consumers of that information, thereby becoming themselves, in large part misinformed. So I don't have the same feeling about pornography. Obviously, I think that should be limited. But there are ways of going about it that don't propel people to then go and find the content. The way that they did it, coming together and, censoring him all in the same day, like they were dropping a big, enormous, multinational ban hammer on him, all it's done is make him stronger, like in the Star Wars movies, where it was actually Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "Strike me down, Vader, and I'll become even more powerful than you can imagine." And that's what's happened here. Alex Jones now has just think of the traffic there. 5.4 million newsletter subscribers. Those are the kind of numbers most people can't even imagine. And he just got those in a 48-hour period after YouTube said, you're not our friend. You can't sit with us. I don't get it. I don't get why they didn't just leave him alone and stop publicizing him. Now he's huge and they won't be able to get rid of him. Like, there's no getting rid of him now. Because with that kind of subscriber base, he could set up his own little mini corner of the internet. And what are they going to do? So anyway, there's that. So I will report back to you on what happens on minds.com, how that works out for me. If I feel like it's of interest. The Department of Homeland Security, pivoting over to tomorrow, I wanted to give you guys this announcement so you'll be prepared. Tomorrow, during hour 1 of the program, we're going to have Dr. Ben Carson on. He's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and they have an announcement that they're making. Some simplification of some processes that are from the Obama era. And so this is a part of the work that Dr. Carson is doing to try to bring HUD into the modern era. And, he has personal experience with HUD, having grown up living in, HUD housing, and his mom, working and she couldn't read and all of that, and really changing the trajectory of her son's lives by focusing on education and, good behavior and being morally upright. And so he is working at HUD, which some people said, oh my gosh, I can't believe he ended up at HUD. I can. I think it's the perfect place for him to be because he has an analytical organizational mind that comes from his time as a neurosurgeon. He's a genius, and he's able to go in and make these changes that need to be made so that people can change their lives because they're connected into the government. And if without any intervention, they stay connected into the government, a huge portion of them, because the government makes it so hard to disconnect. So he's got some different things that they're doing at HUD, and he's going to come on the program tomorrow and announce it here to the listeners. It's going to be fantastic. And I'm really excited about speaking with him again. Last time I spoke with him was when I was at the Eisenhower Executive Office Complex for the White House Radio Media Row. And he was there. He went around the tables, and I got a chance to interview him. He was on my schedule. I requested time with him. He was great in person, as always, and he will be great on the phone tomorrow. So there's that. And then, of course, well, I don't want to just promote one of the guests. We also have, Kathy Barnett. She's a veteran, former adjunct professor, frequent guest on Fox and Friends. So she'll be with us tomorrow. And so I want to go back to some of the things so obviously there's the information about Keith Ellison, and I was talking about the abuse allegations. Well, the story on him has actually been updated. He says that he did have a long-term relationship with the person who's accusing him, and that ended in 2016, but he still cares deeply for her well-being, and he never abused her. Her children, who are adults, say that that is not the case, and that she was definitely abused. It was domestic abuse, and that it was really, really, really terrible. He's actually running to be Minnesota's next attorney general. So that's a law enforcement post. He's a 6-term 5th district congressman, and he's the perceived front runner in the race, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's coming up. Minnesota's primary election. Yeah, it's coming up. I believe it's 2 days away. Yeah, so this is really interesting. They have their need-to-know guide for Minnesota primary day. And breaking news on the video. Remember the accuser says she has video of him pulling her across the room and down the stairs by her hair. She said she never intended for anyone to know, and she doesn't plan on releasing it. So I don't see how anyone could possibly verify what she's claiming happened without her releasing the video. She says that it's humiliating, traumatizing, and for everyone involved, including herself. And so she's frustrated that people won't believe that she was assaulted unless she produces the video. She says she doesn't want to feed into that. Well, then I would wonder why she brings forward these allegations 2 days before the election. And I'm no Ellison supporter, seriously. But if you have proof, you would want to provide it, at least to the authorities, to substantiate the allegation. It's not about salaciousness. She doesn't have to release it to the public. Just give it to the prosecutor. Turn it over to him. It's within the statute of limitations for prosecution. And go from there. That's the sensible thing to do. Or keep it to yourself. Prosecute or keep it to yourself. But character assassination is not the way to go about getting your story believed. All right. That's the show. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. God bless. And I look forward to tomorrow, where we'll have more Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Good evening.